morning and welcome back to Casual Chef's Kitchen. It's Friday. I'm doing this live because I really couldn't go into super depth about Egyptian goulash. I did a bunch of research before I prepared my goulash yesterday via YouTube, and I just want to. I touched on it, this morning in my. I'm sorry, I'm adjusting things here. Sorry. One thing I learned, like I mentioned this morning, is there are several different ways you can make this and prepare this dish. I'm glad I did the research. I really did, because I think it made a major difference in how my end results came out last night. One of the consistent things is the filling. There are variations of this filling, and you can obviously, because every kitchen is different, every taste is different. But the basics are ground beef and onion. Now, where the variation, there's variation in vegetables and other additives that go into this basic filling, but the biggest differences is the spices, but it's the commonality of the spices that go into the goulash. But I want to go back to the use of phyllo dough. As you know, phyllo dough is a very thin pastry. Technically, in the goulash, the bottom crust is supposed to be thinner than the top crust. So if you're here in the United States, we get most of our phyllo, from the grocery store in a box, and it's 2 rolls of phyllo dough. And I actually made this mistake yesterday, and that was the fact that I used the equal amount on the bottom and the top. If I look back at it now, I wish I would have used only half of the first roll of phyllo dough in the bottom of my goulash. Now, like I mentioned this morning in my daily message, there are variations of how to dress, using ghee, clarified butter, melted butter, and olive oil, or a combination of. I know what ghee is. I have ghee. Ghee is expensive, and I don't want to make ghee. Making ghee, I watched my former wife make ghee many times. It's not easy. It's easy, but it's not for the faint of heart. You can actually burn down your kitchen making ghee if you're not careful. So if you buy ghee, from the grocery store or from an Indian store or an Asian store of some sort, you're going to pay for it. Olive oil on its own, whether it's extra virgin or straight olive oil, that's not cheap either. Butter these days is not a cheap option. I'm spending $8 a pound for the clover butter that I use on a regular basis. So I opted to do the kind of the 50-50 blend of olive oil and melted butter, for last night's preparation. and it worked very well. So you have the phyllo dough, you have the way to dampen or to moisten the layers of phyllo dough, whether it's ghee or olive oil or a combination or so forth. And you have your filling. I saw some fillings yesterday that have many vegetables in them or very sparse, like the ground beef and just the onion. Some recipes added garlic. I did add garlic to my filling yesterday. About 3 or 4 cloves minced. One of the other things, excuse me, as I itch my ear, that was definitely hit home was the fact that it was standard across all of the videos that I watched yesterday, is the fact that you cut your squares or your rectangles or diamonds before you bake this recipe. It is imperative. Apparently, if you don't cut it, it's very hard to cut after. Unlike baklava, which we all know and love from Greece, you cut baklava, as far as I understand. I've never made baklava, but you cut baklava after it's been baked. Because one of the things that's added to, once you get everything done with the phyllo dough and the filling and the phyllo dough again, you get all these layers and the butter and olive oil and all that stuff, is you're actually adding about 2 cups plus 2 to 3 to 4 eggs that have been whisked together, and you pour that over the cut top of the goulash. I saw it on several videos. I mean, it's in every video, but it varies between 1 egg, 2 eggs to up to 4 eggs, and 1 to 2 cups of milk, of whole milk. But basically, when you bake it, it basically gets absorbed, and that's what gives you that beautiful finish. And I will admit, I baked my goulash too long. It should not be that dark. It should be a golden brown, not a darker brown, like mine is. And I apologize for that, but it still is very tasty. Now, the big thing I want to talk about is the spices in this dish. The Egyptian goulash, being a Mediterranean area, it's not really brought out by a lot of different cookbooks and chefs and cooks and so forth. I'm glad I did the research that I did on YouTube, because excuse me as I move my notes, I found a spice blend that's not new, like I said this morning, but it's new to me as a chef. And that's the Baharat spice mix. Now, a friend of mine, good old Ernie, basically tells me, and I looked it up and I did the research, and he's correct, that Baharat is Arabic for spices. So it's a spice mix. Let me just read you real quickly the list here. Black pepper, nutmeg, paprika, coriander, cinnamon, cloves, cumin, salt, cardamom. What a mix. Oh. Some of the more grander, honestly, personally, some of the more grander spices are in this mix. Cardamom and cumin and coriander. Again, cinnamon and nutmeg and cloves, they're as Americans, we see them as something in a sweet dessert. Cloves and ham. But in a lot of regions of the world, including Mexico and Latin and Spanish and other places in the world, these spices are used for savory. And if you see the percentages on this mix, nutmeg is, that's number 2 up there. It's way up there, nutmeg. So I have already posted this Baharat spice mix in the group with measurements and so forth. So this is, Robin last night said something to me that really kind of really hit home right here in the heart. That because of the research I did on this dish, I took it up many levels and made it sure it was correct. Yes. I actually dumped out the original spices I had, which were nutmeg and some of the other things that are actually in this list. But I wanted a very complex spice blend here. Now, one of the things I did notice in one of the videos that I watched is the fact they use a bit of chili powder. I did add some chili powder, and I used the chili powder I have from India. It's not Mediterranean, but it's much better than a chili from, let's say, Mexico. It added just a touch of heat, but what's beautiful about the at least this particular Indian chili powder that I have, it goes away. It doesn't linger. It hits with the little bit of punch that it has, and then it goes away. So I borrowed that from one of the videos that I watched, and I must have watched between 8 and 10 videos yesterday. So, bottom line, I did the research on this because I had never made it before. It was different. I don't work with phyllo dough very often. Other than what I can't find puff pastry. I actually did see one video that kind of went into, if you don't want to work with phyllo dough or can't get phyllo dough, you can use puff pastry, because it's easier. But this particular recipe really said to me personally, figure it out. Figure out how the Middle East is doing this. Whether it's Middle East or Egypt or whatnot. So that's why I did the extra research on this, because it was so unfamiliar for me. It's super simple, but if you don't have the tools and like this particular, a spice blend to go together, because how I love to deal and delve deep into the spice blends of the cuisine that I prepare. So I've shared a lot of information on this. This Egyptian goulash, aka a phyllo meat pie, and then the Baharat spice mix, which is spice mix. On this Friday, have a great day, eat great food, and have fun.